So, welcome everyone. A very good evening to all of you. And in this special times, need some special inputs. And there's nothing better than spiritual inputs coming from Bhagavad Gita. So, we'll continue with our discussion, our journey on Bhagavad Gita, which we started around 2 weeks back. And uh, wherein we discussed the session one. We are covering every chapter. We are covering. We have covered so far 5 chapters of Bhagavad Gita in a very succinct way. Of course, the more we discuss on each and every verse, each and every chapter, there are many more things to learn. But the intention, of course, is that we basically try to at least get the complete you know spectrum of what Bhagavad Gita talks about, and broadly what Bhagavad Gita is speaking about. And then definitely there's a lot of homework which we can do, which we can undertake in order to understand this better. We started with session one, which was which talked about the doubt faced by Dhritarashtra, doubt faced by Duryodhan, and doubt faced by Arjun. And though the quality of doubt, the place, the conflict was almost similar, but the results were very very different for all these three folks. And we see that no Arjun basically converted his doubt into an opportunity to learn, and that's why it's called Vishad Yoga, the first chapter. All because of his good qualities of being humble, and of course he had conflicts, of course he had confusions, but that is not a disqualification. The qualification is that no, even though one may do mistakes, but it's important to remain humble and remain in receiving mode uh, for inputs and for getting better. So this was the overall intent which we discussed in the first chapter. And after Arjuna expresses his doubt, his in and when he takes a position of basically receiving knowledge, then the second chapter begins, which was Gita, which is the summarized content Gita summarized. So that we discussed about it, that every scripture when it begins, in the beginning itself it gives the gist of what is going to come in the full scripture. So Gita, Bhagavad Gita, in that second chapter is the most important chapter, because it gives the complete description of the full 18 chapters which are going to come in. So it was a very long chapter, and of course almost various concepts were being covered in it. Concept related to mind, concept related to spiritual teacher, concept related to identity, that we are soul, concept related to duties. So a lot actually. But what we see in subsequent chapters, each and every of this concept, we go deeper into it. Okay. So second chapter was more to basically give a download, complete summarized version of spiritual knowledge. Okay, so we discussed that we are not this body, we are soul, and Krishna explains that very very in a lot of different ways, that how we are just not this body, lump of matter. We are spirit souls, and it is that soul which is actually the most active principle. Soul is life, actually speaking. And when the soul changes, moves from one body to another, the basis, the desire which the living entity may have. So that sort of is called the movement of life which happens. And the most important and active principle, though, remains that constant factor which is soul, which is just we. So we also understood that no, not many hours in a day, maybe not even minutes a day, maybe not even seconds a day, we think about actually ourselves, which is soul. We think about the activities of this body, but we are not thinking about soul. So this also goes to explain that no, how example which is given in second chapter also is that no, just like a driver is taking care of his car very very nicely, and and the basically the owner is very very nicely taking care of the car, but the driver is neglected. So then what happens is that you have very nice, very glossy, shining car. with all amazing tires, and the new tires, and the engine is great, and everything is just amazing about the car, but the driver is completely neglected and he is dead with hunger. So similarly, and we see also, no, when there's a car accident, you don't actually go and save the car, we save the person inside. So similarly, this body is good, we have to maintain this, that is important. And that's not something which is message of Bhagavad Gita. The message of Bhagavad Gita is, while we are actually maintaining this body, it's important that we don't neglect the soul. um, so therefore the two duties concept of Gita came in, and then we move to the third chapter, which is which talked about how we have to remain active. In spirituality doesn't mean inaction, which is a usual misconception, that when we become spiritual or when we get become more religious, the tendency is that we become inactive. But that's not actually religion. Religion, as we had always been talking about, it includes activities. It is based on knowledge, and in heart it is devotion. So that's how we'll see that these three pillars are going to get again and again talked about. Then we talked about, it's not just activity. Again, the second pillar is that of knowledge. So what is that knowledge? Knowledge about God. That who is God? Who is God is different from us. It's not that we can become God or God can become like us. No, God is God and we are God. We are wherever we are, and there is no possibility for us to artificially sort of take the position that, no, okay, I can take care of this world, and uh, I am basically mm, taking care of the people around me and all. So we do our part, but ultimately it is the God who is ultimately being is in ultimate control of this whole situation. And while we also conduct our activities, which we are supposed to, as we discussed, like Arjuna was supposed to fight, he was supposed to fight, but then he was supposed to fight under the direction of Lord. So that was his duty. Okay, so duty, being a servant, was something which is duty as a servant, as an assistant, is something which is an important concept to be known. So that's why this knowledge was important. And then in the fifth chapter, we went on discussing about the step, wherein we discussed about how it is very we'll come to the summary of that step thing also. And now we'll sort of quickly move into the, the subsequent sixth chapter. So I'll share my screen. So this was the step wherein we discussed about how one has to continue to stay in this world, while understanding that though we are soul and we temporarily stay in this body, it's very important that while we are in this body, we do our duties nicely. But in doing those duties, we have to remember the true position what we hold, true position of God Himself, and true position of the nature which facilitates us to do so many things. Okay, so which were the three doers? We also discussed that there is no essentially no difference between living entities. So there is equality. So there is a spiritual equality which is there. The equality cannot be on the external perspective. That's not possible. That's artificial to be brought in. But there is a definite equality at the level of soul. So everyone is spiritually equal. Therefore, everybody has an equal right in understanding God and in doing activities in connection with God. And one will need not fight for it. One gets the due results also in a very equal way. So there is no conflict over there. There is no question, because conflicts come when I know my right, enjoying my rights might encroach into others' rights. But there is God is unlimited, and his so the access to him can be done by unlimited people, and everybody has an equal right, and they can enjoy equally the association of God, the connection with God. The whole point is so while there is spiritual equality, there is spiritual fatherhood also which is there. Okay, So Krishna is the owner. That was the peace formula we discussed. No, Bhuktaram Yagita Prasant Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Krishna declares that I am actually ultimately the owner of whatever you see. Okay, I own everything, and not only I own, I am beneficiary of whatever sacrifice happens. Ultimately, I am the one who actually is supposed to be the ultimate beneficiary. So when there is universal fatherhood, then only universal brotherhood is possible. So that's the key point, because if the fatherhood is not universally known and understood, it's very difficult to be peaceful in the universal brotherhood concept. So we are seeing that, no, we try and create, give the attempt, genuine attempts to have very equality and a universal connection with each other, but there will always be differences unless and until we try to connect each other uh, with our identity, which is a soul, and through our common father, which is God himself. So then only universal brotherhood is possible. So this was the knowledge, it was full of knowledge, and this whole thing. But you know what happens, and that's what the basis of this whole next session is going to be. Even if one has knowledge, even if one is spirited, even if one's nature is good, uh, and even if one starts with good intentions, what we see is that, no, even after knowing all these things, sometimes it's so difficult to follow the right path. Sometimes it's so difficult to continue on the right thing. You know, I mean, once somebody was sharing with me that, no, that no, we must start with very good nature in our lives. No, we really want to help each other. We really want to. But what happens? The events in life ensure sometimes that we lose our goodness. Okay, so eventually we sort of become, we change our priorities, and we change our it becomes so difficult to traverse on the right path, and sometimes it becomes so difficult to handle that conflict that people go into depression, people go into committing some aggressive act of suicide, and so on and so forth. What is that reason? What is that one factor which can ensure that what we know we want to do, we actually do? What is that gap which can bridge, which can help us bridge, what is that bridge which can help us, sort of connect the two gaps or two distant points of what should be done and what actually happens? That one factor is called mind. It is mind which is so powerful. I mean, imagine the power of mind, that it is so powerful that even after resolving anything for our life, we can't do it unless mind permits us to do. It is so powerful. I mean, even the best of the people who accomplish so many things, but to ensure that mind continues to cooperate in whatever we are doing, it becomes so difficult. It becomes so difficult. And we may think that we are very strong and everything is going good, but then there will be something which will happen in our life which can disturb our mental balance, and then we will sort of like, no, it's difficult to restore it back. Okay, so it is this mind which is an extremely powerful force within us, which is responsible for, which can be potentially responsible for our growth in life, and which can also be possible to ruin our life. It is that powerful force. And there's nothing more powerful in this world except mind. It is the mind which can impel people to do great things in this world, which can contribute positively to so many people. And it is this mind which can impel people to do something so destructive, which has negative impact for generations to come. It is this mind which can, if it so goes out of the control, then uh, it is so difficult to sort of it is so difficult that, no, this mind If it goes out of control, then even the well established person with very good IQ, one is very intelligent, one is academically amazing, everything is there, everything is in place. But if the mind is not understood and is not controlled, then that same mind can lead that intelligent person to do something very, very foolish. Okay. So this mind is an extremely powerful force within us. It's like, I mean, you remember we used to see those, cartoons of, Aladdin ka chirag, the jinn used to come out of it. Okay. So वो चिराग में से जब जिन निकलता था, तो that jinn used to be so big and gigantic. But sometimes when that jinn used to go out of control, then even that person who has actually taken out that jinn from that bottle used to run for his life. Similarly, this mind is also like a jinn. Okay, it is so gigantic. It is not seen. None of us can see mind, but it is so powerful. It is so very powerful that if it goes out of control, if it is not engaged properly, then it will run after that same person who apparently who is owning that jinn. That is we ourselves. Okay. So this sixth chapter is dedicated to controlling mind, and it is a practice. It is not a one time formula. It is not a pill. It is not an antibiotic which one can take for 3 days. It is not. It is something which is not magical, which is going to happen. And Krishna himself, who is God, he is telling it to Arjuna that you have to practice to control this mind. And if this mind is not controlled, we'll see what happens. Okay, so this chapter is therefore called easy. So easy is to connotate something which is not easily done, which is to control this mind. Okay, and this chapter is named as Dhyan Yoga. Dhyan, concentrating mind, concentrating the faculty of our thinking, feeling, willing. That concentration is something which is very, very key in the process of spirituality. It's not that only bhakti yoga which is propounded in Bhagavad Gita, but any other yoga which we talk about, everybody, in fact, anything we want to achieve in this world, it's very important to concentrate our mind. But it's important to understand that while we concentrate, what we concentrate upon, that is also very important to understand. We understand that we have to concentrate our mind, we have to focus our mind, we have to just be like, no, not negative, not negative. But what is that substance on which our mind is getting focused eventually is something which is very important to understand. Because just like that jinn, if that jinn doesn't get the engagement which it is supposed to made for, then that jinn, if unengaged, even if you say no, 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 it will run after us only. So this is the nature of mind, which even the best of um, the scientists and the psychologists, everybody, the whole world is struggling to understand the mysterious nature of mind, and which is being explained in the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Now, this chapter easy, E stands for enemy or friend. And guess what? We are talking of mind. This mind can be enemy and this mind can be friend. And Krishna first explains a very, very well known process of concentration of mind, which is called Ashtanga Yoga, okay, or Hatha Yoga. He explains it. He explains what it actually means to practice Ashtanga Yoga. Then what also comes is response from Arjun. When he hears all that, what is the response of Arjun? And then Krishna goes ahead and explains the real path of yoga. So this is a very, 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 very important chapter. Verses 1 to 9 talks of this mind, how it can be friend, how it can be enemy. But you just have a look at the wonderful verses of Bhagavad Gita. Such clear understanding of mind is given by Lord, and we can probably beat around the bush and write books on mind. But that is the beauty of God. That's why God is creator. It's not that He's just creator for the heck of saying it. He actually is creator, and you can make out from these sutras which Lord is giving in like 4 lines, 4 short lines. Krishna is one after another giving sutras about ourselves, about mind, and how the mind is, and giving so many, giving so much detailed information about this. What the first the so we are just taking the important verses, and first 1 to 9 of this chapter verses. You can always have a look at the book. We have already shared the soft copy in our WhatsApp group, and you can always go ahead and purchase. We are referring to Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. We are referring to that Bhagavad Gita. So please go ahead and buy a copy, or probably take it from the group where we are referring it to. Please go ahead, read it. But we are going to here pick up only the important verses. So verse 5, what it says is Uddharet Atman Atmanam Na Atmanam Avasadeyet Atmaiva hi Atmano Bandhur Atmaiva Ripur Atmana. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So mind can be the greatest friend, but mind can be the greatest enemy also if one doesn't use the mind to elevate oneself in the spiritual path. So here is the first important instruction which Lord is giving us, that the use of mind eventually should be not to degrade oneself. It should be to elevate and deliver oneself. Deliver from what? Deliver from this cycle of material desires and the negative thoughts, negative emotions, and negative, these are called anarthas actually. Technically, from Sanskrit perspective, these are called anarthas, which includes काम कोप क्रोध लोभ मोह. So basically all these negative things, one has to use his mind to deliver oneself from these negative things. That is a proper usage of mind. And if one tries to do that, mind is the friend. But if one uses the mind to degrade oneself, then mind becomes the worst enemy. That's the first point. So the important thing is mind is like a knife, neutral, absolutely neutral. But if the knife is not used, the sharp knife, a very, very sharp knife, uh, just a touch can cut whatever comes in contact. But if that knife is not used properly uh, for cutting vegetables and offering it to, let's say, Lord, one can use a knife immaturely and cut one's finger. So mind has to be used for higher purposes. Mind should not be used to satisfy our base desires. If one uses mind to satisfy one's base desires, one's negative emotions, one's negative desires of hating, of jealousy, of envy, of so many things, that mind will trap us. Not that mind will do it, because if we are using it, the law is that mind is going to keep us trapped in those thoughts, in those desires, and then we will do it all the more. Then we'll get trapped all the more. Then we'll do it all the more. Then we'll get trapped all the more. And in this way, this cycle will become endless. Rather, if one uses mind to actually bring oneself to the higher plane, uses the mind to actually come out of this and come at the lotus feet of Lord God, remain connected to Him, then the same mind will become helpful, useful. Because please remember, God is the owner of everything. So God is owner of this body. When we use this body, it's that we have a life. It's not that we are talking theory right now. There are hundreds and thousands of millions of cases around us We are seeing that people, why there is depression, why there is suicidal tendencies, because the mind is not absorbed in the thoughts of God. Rather, mind is absorbed in the godlessness, and therefore there is so much chaos around, despite having so many things, because the owner of mind is God. And if we are not using God's property in his due direction, then it is just going to break us. We will never be able to control mind. And the second point, even we see talk about bodies right now. We're seeing so many cases of cancer. We are talking of lifestyle diseases and so many things, because even the body is supposed to be used in a certain way. It's not that it's our body and we can use it in any damn way we want. The body is given to us. And you remember in the probably earlier times, probably in our, like now if we go back 40, 50 years, it was natural for people to sleep early, wake up early, do the activities related to God, remain clean, all these things. So it was very natural in our culture to use our body and mind favorably for our deliverance. But now what we are seeing is what we are seeing is that the usage is becoming more and more, whatever I want to do, I'll do. I'm free. We are not free. If we are free, let's stop death. Can we stop death? If we are free, let's stop disease. Can we stop disease? If we are free, let's stop old age. Can we stop old age? No. We cannot stop any of these things. So we are not free. We are free, we are independent, but in a dependent way. Just like there's a playground in a school, and child can play in playground and say that I'm free, but in that sense he's not so free, because he can't go out of the school and start playing outside the boundary of school, right? So we are free to work in a certain periphery, but beyond that we are not. So we have to recognize this reality of life, and then it becomes easier to deliver ourselves. And then Krishna goes on saying, for one who has conquered, and the way of concurrence is using the mind positively to deliver ourselves. When one does that, then the mind is the best of the friends. What is the quality of the best of the friends? They will always be there with us. And what is the quality of greatest enemy? Because that's what Krishna says, that no one who fails to do so, his mind will remain greatest enemy. It will always give the advice which is contrary to our good, such a mind. And the problem is whether the mind is best friend or greatest enemy. As soul, we always think mind is our best friend. We always follow the advice of the mind. So better to turn the tables and make our mind best friend. And then it will be very cooperative within us, within our body, within our existence to operate. So that's a beauty. Krishna goes on saying, one who conquers the mind, then the super soul is already reached. And then the actual tranquility comes. Tranquility means complete peace comes for that a person. And what are the symptoms of such a person? Sitoshna sukha dukkeshu tatha mana pamanayo. To such a person, happiness and distress, he becomes more or less equal in that. He is not too happy and too distressful. He probably may be having emotions, but then he easily overcomes it and moves on. Then honor, dishonor, somebody honors, somebody dishonors, he remains equal. He doesn't develop any grudges within his heart and moves on. What an amazing stage. All of us want to be in that stage, right? So the key is to conquer the mind, and then it becomes easy. Why such a person is, it's so easy to tolerate all these things and seeing all these things duality equally? Because he has already achieved the supreme thing, which is super soul. He has already achieved God. So to such a person, what is left to be achieved? There's nothing left to be achieved, right? Because he has already achieved everything. He has achieved God. So he may continue doing his duties. We'll see Arjuna continues fighting. We'll see everything will continue happening. And they'll get whatever they get. But if they don't get, they are also fine. If they get, they're also fine. They're fine both ways. Okay. So that is the beauty. And the law is that no, um, even if we had to give facilities to someone, let's say we have a servant, And we see in the behavior of a servant that he is very fascinated about, wow, wonderful comforts and all those things. It will be very difficult for us if we are moving out of the house for 1 week to give house to that person. We'll feel that he's always is so already so fascinated. He may actually become so, he may actually start using it in a different way. But whereas there is a servant who is satisfied and he's very dutiful and he's uh, just, I mean, he's okay if the comforts are there, he's okay. He just focuses on his duty. And then if you have to go for a week, we'll be definitely more comfortable with that person giving, taking responsibility. Similarly, in this world, uh, the no, God looks for such individuals actually who can overcome the use the mind properly to deliver and conquer the functioning of the mind. Then it will become easier for them to control the distress and the honor, everything else. So this is a symptoms further explained that how such a person who is actually reached super soul, for them what has happened, the theoretical knowledge is converted into Vigyan. Gyan means knowledge. Vigyan means realization of the same knowledge. So Gyan Vigyan Triptatma Utastha Vijitendriya Yukta Eti Uchyate Yogi Sama Lostasma Kanchana. That for such a person, what has become? He has situated in transcendence and he is in complete control. He is in complete self control. And for him, everything is same. Pebbles, stone, gold, everything becomes the same eventually. And now Krishna talks how to do that control of mind, how to begin. And here he starts explaining a little bit, gets into the Ashtanga Yoga thing. And how Ashtanga Yoga or Hatha Yoga begins? It begins with um, changing our habits, regulating our habits. So this is the first formula which Krishna gives to control the mind. We can talk all big things, but it all starts with simple things. And what Krishna says, Yukta har viharasya, Yukta chestasya karmashu, Yukta swapna vabodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. He's saying be regulated in anything, whether you are eating, you're sleeping, your recreation, work, anything. So all these things, if you notice, you can't live without them. We can't live without eating. So Krishna is not impractical when he's saying we are soul. It's not that um, Krishna will say that, okay, you what you do is no, you should no, you are anyway souls to stop eating for this body. No, he's not saying or stop sleeping. What Krishna is saying that be regulated in these habits. It's not that you're eating anytime, you're sleeping anytime. You're eating either nothing or so many things. You're sleeping either 1 hour, 2 hours a day, or then 15 hours a day. So there has to be regulation. There has to be consistency. There has to be pattern. Regulation means same thing done for same duration of time at the similar times every day. Same thing for same duration at similar time. So let's say I sleep at particular time, I continue sleeping. No, I con- sort of more regulate my life in such a way that I sleep by that time, I wake up by other time, I eat at a particular time, I eat, stop eating it, like that. Similarly, recreation. So there are different modes of recreation. Of course, we have to. Krishna also says that no, we should recreate also in goodness, but there has to be. It's not that we don't get into recreation. It's not that, I think that's not a problem for us. We do a lot of things of recreation, but there has to be some limit to it, because mm, if we are just recreating, it goes to wastage of time. If we don't recreate, mind becomes disturbed. So we have to do some recreation, but there has to be for some stipulated time which we put in, and then after that we have to just stop it, just to ensure that our mind is okay. Shh. Just like you drink water, thirst is satisfied, khatam, that's fine. So similarly, some recreation to break from the current routine so that we can come back with full energy in our regular routine. It's not that recreation is an end in itself and we go deeper into it. Recreation is just meant to lighten our load and come back to the routine which we were into. That is what recreation is. And work. It's not that we just endlessly working or no working, no work at all, or endlessly working. There's nothing in between. So we have to, it's very tough, but we have to start doing it. We have to regulate our life. And that's the beginning of mind control. Then he goes on explaining, of course, that such a yogi who practice hatha yoga. And I think there are some verses in between, between 17 to 36, where Krishna says that no, which in fact is mentioned over here. Yeah, primarily hatha yoga and pranayam. So there are basically no, there are some special things which we need to do to practice hatha yoga. One is that one has to practice celibacy. One has to be in a very quiet place. One has to not, one cannot be doing achieve. The purpose of hatha yoga is actually to achieve super soul, which we just saw, that no, controlling mind and then eventually achieving super soul. So that one has to practice celibacy. One has to remain in the isolated environment, not that we are here are cars going and here and there and we are practicing yoga. Yes, that is good for our bodily fitness, but the purpose of yoga, as I told, that no, is more about the achievement of mental achievement of super soul, connecting with the super soul. So that there are certain things you have to sit with the kushagrass. You cannot be having complete eyes closed. One has to have half eyes closed and half eyes open, because if we close fully eyes, then we'll go to sleep, and if we have full eyes open, then we'll get distracted. So it has to be just half open, half closed, and we are focusing just on. And in that way, one has to continue practicing. One has to be isolated from any passionate environment. That's how actually hatha yoga is technically performed. And that Krishna goes on explaining, and then he says that no, that when one does that for a very good period of time, then hey, that person achieves me very easily. Okay, and then he sees me in every being, and also sees, of course, Krishna says that one has to leave everything. One cannot be engaged in passion. So like no, oh, that's very amazing part. No, Arjuna again gets confused. No, on one hand, you are saying that no, you have to do this for Ashtanga yoga and all, and then you are saying me to fight also. How can I do fighting with Ashtanga yoga? Tell me, and I can achieve you. It's not possible. So, but Krishna starts explaining that if we do that, no, then it is possible that no, you can see Lord, you can see me everywhere you want to see, and you will see me everywhere. But then Arjuna says that no, boss, it is not easy. It is not easy. And this is what Arjun says to Krishna. This is verse 34. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayureva suddushkaram. So there are, mind is so restless. Arjun says that. And this is Arjuna saying. Arjuna was such a qualified person, and he tells, sir, that is fine, all this what you are saying, that no one has to sit with eyes closed and everything for the purpose of achieving God. That is very difficult process. I am a person who is a fighter. It is so difficult for me to operate in this environment and control my mind also and everything. So what he says is, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. The mind is so restless, chanchal. It is so turbulent, it is obstinate, and it is very strong. Oh Krishna, and to subdue it, I think it is easier to control wind by windmill. We're not saying windmill, but the technology is there, right? We can control wind through windmill and produce energy. But mind, impossible to control like that. So that's how Arjuna expresses. And Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Krishna says, Asamshayam Mahabhava. Oh mighty, he says that no, oh mighty, the son of Kunti, oh Arjuna. And he specifically mentions Mahabhava because even if you are Mahabhava, I agree and I accept Mano Durni Graham Chalam. It is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihate. So by suitable practice, it is possible. And then Krishna starts explaining the easier and more practical way. And now Krishna gets into the realm of Bhakti Yoga. But before that, Arjuna asks something more. That no, he talks of, as we discussed, in easy. So we discussed E, which was enemy or friend, which is the mind. Then A. Then there is S, and S is success or failure. But there are so many things which are there. No, we are talking about this, yoga and controlling mind. It is so difficult, and it is so very possible that no, we may fail in this process. Okay, and it is not easy thing to win. What if I fail? I give up on my, you are telling leave this, leave that, become regulated, so many things. I leave all those things. Sometimes this question comes, in spirituality, that no, अरे सब कुछ जब हो जाएगा तो बुढ़ापे में करेंगे ना, तब ज्यादा सही है. तो क्या होगा कि पहले का भी we will enjoy life and then also we will think of God. But actually that never happens, because in old age it's so difficult to think about God. The faculties are all the more uncontrolled. Body may be reserved, but then there's nothing to do. There's a lot of time, but mind is thinking about iska kya hoga, uska kya hoga, sometimes about the whole country and whatever, like no, and social circle and so many things. So it is something which has to be cultivated from the beginning of life, this whole practice of yoga. But still, what Arjuna says is that no, you give up this thing, then what happens to such a people? So then Krishna says is Prapya Punya Kritam Lokan Ushitva Shashwati Shamha Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Bhrasto Vijayate. Even if one fails, one gets birth in very high families in later lives. And one either gets birth in family of righteous people, or one gets birth in the family of very aristocratic people. Okay, so that is how it is going to happen, so that it becomes easier to practice yoga in such a stage. Okay, but after doing all these things, now Krishna starts giving the easier path. Okay, again he brings back to the point that Ashtanga yoga, which if we read through the verses, we have not included some of those verses here. It is so difficult to practice Ashtanga yoga in this current day and age. Ultimately Krishna says yoginam api sarvesham mad gatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yoma same yukta tamo mataha. There are so many types of yoga. There are so many people who are trying to do yoga. Some will be at this level, some will be at that level, some will be at that level. But the topmost yogi is one who, with great faith, follows whatever I say. Because if one does that, he's thinking of God himself, then even the usual activities become yoga. So if I am with full faith doing my duties, thinking it is Krishna's will and Krishna's no system, Krishna's rules, and of course there are so many details in Varnashram as we see, and he thinks of, Krishna says, he thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is highest of all. That is my opinion. And with this, actually, the just like a sandwich, in a sandwich there are bread, pieces, loaves on the two sides, but inside there is masala. Similarly, the first six chapters talk of Gyan, Karma, and Yoga. But now with this verse, we enter into the masala of Bhagavad Gita, which is Bhakti Yoga. Now Krishna says that ultimately, since everything comes from me, even if you control, the best way to control is, and the most natural way to control anything and everything is, and have the peaceful life, and the most easiest form of yoga, and to achieve me in the most easiest way while you're doing whatever you're doing, is have great faith in me and follow whatever I say and render service to me. What kind of service? Not a ritual based service, loving service. In a loving, whatever love you have, 1 gram, 2 grams, 3 grams, 4 grams, whatever faith one has, 2%, 3%, 4%. With that faith and love, if one follows God and one renders service to God, and we'll explore what is that service to God in the subsequent chapters. We are going progressively. That one can do in whatever situation one is in life. That a person, Krishna says, is ultimately united with me in yoga. Most intimately. And that thing is easiest to perform. and that thing is highest of all. There are so many, as I told, different types of yoga for different types of results. But ultimately, yoginam api sarvesham madgata antaratmana. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Ultimately, just serve me and follow whatever I say. In that sense, you will always think of me. Just like I mean, it's so easy for a mother or a father to think of child. It is not difficult to think of child, right? Is it difficult? No, it's not at all difficult to think of one's child. Even if I'm in office, I'm thinking of my child. Why? Because there is love. There is love. I'm working for him. I'm working for my family. It is so easy, natural to think like that, right? It's not difficult. You work. So actually, though one is working, but one is not working for office. One is actually working for one's family. Because if one's family is not there, no motivation to work. Get lost. I'm going. Okay. So it is in the same principle. If we start rendering service to the Lord. So I'm coming back to those two duties now. One duty is with great faith, whatever faith we have, just like in a SIP. No, you invest in an SIP or a mutual fund. You invest whatever you have, like 2,000 rupees per month, and that increases. Okay, and then you take it back, and then you invest it more, it becomes 4,000, and then you, whatever it is. No, I am not biased towards SIP, by the way. I'm just giving an example of any investments you take in this world. We start with some basic capital, we invest, that increases, then we take it back, then we invest it back, then it increases. Similarly, this faith is our capital. It's not that all of us will have equal faith right now, but with whatever faith we have, if we invest that faith in the service of Lord, in following the orders of God, that is an investment, and we get return of greater faith, of greater love, and then we invest that more, then we get greater, then we invest that more, then we get greater, then we, and in this way our faith goes on increasing, our love goes on increasing, our faith becomes stronger, our love becomes stronger for Lord. And then Krishna says he is always united with me. Imagine what kind of protection Lord is giving. What is the protection? Let's say, just for a very crude example, if one of us are just very constantly united with the Prime Minister of India, such a confidence one will get. Oh, I'm on Prime Minister. Come on, I can do anything. We are talking of Prime Minister of this creation. If we are always united with him, what kind of confidence we can get? So that is the assurance which Krishna is giving. So with full faith, with whatever our background is, doesn't matter. Krishna doesn't even see. We see towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tu asar papebhyo moksheshami mashucha. That whatever is your past, you just surrender unto me, give up all your, and you just follow. I'll take care of whatever is there, and I'll deliver you from all your sinful reactions. Just do not fear. This is a kind of assurance, and now we will see a series of assurances will come from Lord, because now Lord has also come in his bhav, because ultimately Lord doesn't come here to do some sort of arrangement. Ultimately Lord comes out of his love for us. So we will see now that Lord's bhav is going to come out in Bhagavad Gita. Now he will actually get into, and his love for living beings like us that take up to devotional process. Just come to me and I'll take care of everything. All those things will start, and it is such a loving no words of Lord which will come now henceforth, that we will get we will get flat, and we will definitely think of accepting him as the Lord of our heart and lives. Okay. So with that, we will close with the sixth chapter. I'll take some questions. There are some questions. We have short time. Shashi Shekhar has saying that English, Hindi. Yeah. So we will try to mix. One of the question is about the language. Uh, no, we will try to see that how much Hindi we can mix in this. We'll also have some shorter videos of these different concepts also coming in slowly, which will be in different languages, of course, English and Hindi. How can we decide that we are doing whether it is right or wrong? Means who told to mind? Means is there any background of mind? No, so right and wrong, that comes from scriptures, that comes from Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we cannot decide. Mind has to work under the direction of what is right and wrong. That's why it is jinn, right? The direction which we give to the jinn is is what the jinn is going to work. What we are talking here is that jinn is very powerful, but if it gets proper direction of right versus wrong, as you were saying, which comes from scriptures, which is actually going to increase our spiritual intelligence, and thus mind will function very normally, because under spiritual intelligence mind will function very normally. Because why? We are following the orders of God, and remember, mind is God's property. So the right and wrong comes from Bhagavad Gita. Right and wrong comes from scriptures. Right and wrong comes. So we have to study, just like we studied, like no, we studied first standard, second standard, third standard, fourth standard. After that, we got to know so many things, right? Similarly, we have to study right and wrong. Of course, the basic premise of right and wrong is whether this is favorable for me to serve the Lord, whether this action is favorable for me to serve the Lord, or whether this action is unfavorable for me to serve the Lord. This is the basic premise of differentiating between right and wrong. So that we have to understand. And then we have to go study these scriptures, study these in details, and we'll go through as we proceed in the other chapters. We'll discuss so many aspects of religion, what is right. We'll talk of modes of nature very shortly, which will differentiate between right and wrong very, very clearly. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, of faithlessness, faithfulness. So many things will come now. So just hold on, and we'll have more uh, discussions on this. How can mind judge the situation? I have already told that no, mind is will become trained up, just like a child gets trained up by the parents. So mind will also get trained up to judge the situation. Eventually mind will also choose right and wrong, but when it is trained up by the spiritual intelligence, and mind can actually do its own judgment, but it takes time. Initially one has to practice, unless mind becomes naturally inclined towards right and naturally inclined towards wrong. See, some days we will be so, mind will be so this thing that no, oh, I'm going to wake up in morning, and no, we are mind is, and the next day mind, the same mind will come, okay, let's sleep for 10 hours more. So that's how mind is. Mind is very fickle. It's not that it is by nature no wrong. It's like that. It's like a child, restless child below 5 years kind of. So someday this mood, so it's a duty of the parent to regulate and no control, no, okay, not this. And not in the mood of beating mind, not in the mood of enmity with mind, in the mood of protecting mind, in the mood of actually correcting mind and taking it in control. Suppose we are in a situation and do or die, how can we decide with mind or soul? So as I told, no, if we continue the association with the scriptures, if we continue the association of hearing from Bhagavad Gita, then slowly we will get inspiration from the super soul within. Okay, and we will understand, no, this is what we should supposed to do and all. So there are two kinds of inspiration which comes in our heart. The one inspiration which comes from Paramatma himself. Okay, the super soul. Like many of you probably are coming and sitting over here. We are hearing all these things. This is the inspiration which is coming from Paramatma. Okay, and when mind becomes sufficiently purified, then mind itself will want to be in this kind of association. But right now mind is has to be treated and has to be controlled. Dhyan yoga is of many kinds. uh, I've heard of 112 types of Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, the different way of dhyan for different nature of people. Yes, Dhyan Yoga must be of different kinds. Of course, there are so many, the scriptures which are there. I think we discussed it in our first or second session where, we have Aranyakas, Samhitas, and then we also have Brahmanas, and then we have Upanishads. So when we talk of Aranyakas or when we talk of Brahmanas, there are so many different forms of processes which are there, which yield different kinds of results also to a different level. Okay, so what Krishna is saying is, the ideal form of Hatha Yoga, which is actually, as I mentioned, practicing complete celibacy, giving up everything and all. And ideal Hatha Yoga also means not just to treat our diabetes or sugar or the needs. It is about actually achieving super soul. Yes, the byproducts definitely can be those physical things, but ultimately we are talking of achieving God. So then Krishna says is that no, that best is yoginam api sarvesham madgata antaratmana shraddhaman bhajati. So just With faith, serve me and follow whatever I say and do whatever I say in whatever your activities you're performing. And in that way, that's the best form of yoga. Could you please tell us how can we build or create faith according to situation? Faith is always created in association. Faith comes in association. Faith is like let's say we are in the association hmm, of a group of people who like taking drugs. Okay, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. After that, we also get faith that no, there is happiness in taking drugs. That's a faith development which happens. It happens because of association. Similarly, we have to ensure that we have good association. If we have good association, we'll develop good faith in Lord, in Bhagavad Gita, and in the practice of devotional service, which ultimately is being recommended by the Lord in this verse. Is there any relationship between mind and faith? Yes. Uh, doubt is a function of intelligence. Okay, but sometimes doubt also, so when there is lack of faith, and the intelligence is not completely having complete knowledge, so obviously it will have doubt. So that will not allow mind to be resolute or determined. If I don't have complete faith, mind cannot be determined. Mind becomes determined if faith is there. So we have to convince our mind that while we deploy our faith in the service of Lord, we have to convince our mind. Our mind will slowly get the taste in the process of devotional service. Then automatically the faith will increase and mind becomes more resolute. Okay. So wants experience mind wants experience. So this is theory. But if we actually have an experience of devotional service, of serving God, then mind, with that positive experience, the faith will grow up for the mind, and then we can sort of continue. Of course, it begins with faith built on knowledge. Okay, so we hear this. We hear this with our intelligence, then our faith builds up. But then that faith to become stronger, we have to have an experience. That's why we talk of Gyan and Vigyan, right? So we talk of realization of the knowledge. Okay. So with this, we will. Is there any other questions? Hopefully. So we will meet tomorrow, and we'll go deeper into chapter 7. And now the beauty of the devotional service and how Lord protects, and all these things will be given. So the best thing is just the other forms of yoga, the other forms of controlling mind is just you take a gulab jamun in a just after frying, and you put one drop of chashni and you try to lick it, and you put another drop of chashni and try to lick it. But bhakti yoga is you take that gulab jamun, fry and put it in the full syrup, fully into the syrup of that that chasni, what we say, the sugar syrup, and the all the pores of gulab jamun is now filled up with syrup. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed, mind needs absorption. So similarly, the mind is absorbed in the service of Lord. Automatically, anything negative, it just goes away like psh, just like when we shoot, uh, and then all the birds from the tree they fly away. So you don't have to separately go to a branch and pull the branch, and the bird will fly away, and this bird will fly away, and the whole birds fly away. So similarly, um, this wonderful Bhagavad Gita, the process of absorbing ourselves in the service of Lord is so amazing. When the mind becomes absorbed, and all the different negativities and everything just flies away. Okay, thank you all very much. Very for grateful to all of you for taking out time to hearing this, and let us meet tomorrow. And please keep sharing this with your friends, with your family, and just hope that if this knowledge, because the real poverty is poverty of knowledge. So let this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, we are just in an insignificant way. I'm sure there are so many people who are trying to spread this knowledge. So we are also trying our best. So no, and not just for all of you, for me, this is a constant practice, and this is an amazing, experiential journey uh, to grow in life. Okay. So please share it with your friends, family, and we hope to meet again tomorrow. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.